Welcome. The following presentation was recorded at the annual Best Practices for Pollinators Summit hosted by Pollinator Friendly Alliance and the Xerces Society. Please consider participating in the annual summit next year. You can find more about the summit at pollinatorfriendly.org/summit.
Well, my pleasure to be here, everybody. Ray Moranz. I'm a pollinator ecologist with the Xerces Society, and I know there have been multiple talks by Xerces Society folks, so I won't talk a lot about the organization. I will point out that they have me nested within the USDA NRCS as a partner biologist. So I help the NRCS conserve pollinators primarily in the central US. What is the NRCS, for those of you who don't know? It is a federal agency, part of the USDA, and their mission is to deliver conservation solutions so that agricultural producers, farmers and ranchers and foresters, can protect natural resources and feed the world. And they provide technical and financial assistance. So this will come up again way toward the end of the talk. If you are a farmer or a rancher, or you know people who are farmers and ranchers, including people who are urban farmers who have really small farms, perhaps, or really large farms, whatever, NRCS can help. So please look into the NRCS as a source of technical and financial assistance. And at the end, I'll have a slide showing you how to find out their contact info. Okay, outline of my talk. I'm going to give the quickest introduction to butterfly biology ever, really fast because it's pretty basic stuff, I think, for most of us. I'm going to introduce the 6 major butterfly families of North America. I'll talk about the status of some grassland and savanna butterflies. Just a small handful, really. There are many others I could talk about, but I don't have enough time. And then I'll talk about managing grasslands, especially with fire. So, talking a little bit about butterfly biology, of course, something that you may have learned in grade school, hopefully you did, the butterfly life cycle. 4 stages. Egg, these tiny, in the case of a monarch, tiny little white footballs, they look like, or half footballs laid on top of, on the underside of a leaf. The egg turns into a larva. The larva turns into a pupa. The pupa turns to adult. This is a common life cycle for all the butterflies I'm going to talk about today and all butterflies in the world. What do butterflies need to stay alive and to persist? They need host plants for their caterpillars. They need nectar to fuel the adults. There are some butterflies that don't take nectar and they eat other things, including rotten fruit and other things we won't even mention because it's sort of gross. Butterflies need safe places to take shelter at night and during the winter, or where they pupate, and they need protection from pesticides. Of course, this continent 500 years ago didn't have pesticides, so they didn't have to worry about that much. These days they do have a lot. Okay, talk a bit about what the caterpillars need. Most butterfly caterpillars are host plant specialists, meaning they only will feed on a few species of plants or maybe a few genera of plants. In the case, a wonderful example, again, is the monarch. You see the little white football here. That's a monarch egg laid on some milkweed flowers. And over here on the right, you see a large monarch caterpillar consuming those flowers. Usually they eat leaves, but sometimes they'll eat the flowers too. Another example of host plant specialization is the Gulf fritillary butterfly. Way over here on the right, we've got the adult. Females only lay eggs on passion flower. Luckily, here in the southern US, we have native passion flower, absolutely spectacular flower, shown here on the left. The eggs hatch into larvae, and the larvae consume the foliage, and this is what the larvae look like. And of course, eventually they become pupae and adults. But again, this is the only thing these caterpillars eat, passion flower. The adults are less specialized in almost every case than the larvae. But they do show preferences. And I'll use the monarch again as an example. It's a species I work on more than any other species. Of the thousands of species of plants in the central US, there are only a few dozen, or maybe 100, that monarchs use frequently. They tend to be in the aster family, the dog vane family, the nymph family, the vervain family. So again, they're not using all plants in one family. They'll use plants from multiple families, but they are picky. So if you want to keep a given butterfly species happy, you do want to try to find the right nectar sources for it. And the best way to do that for the butterfly community and the pollinator community as a whole is to have a diversity of native plants, wide diversity of native plants blooming throughout the growing season, from all the way over in the spring, very early spring, like maple and willow. And I was in Florida in January, and there were butterflies feeding on maple flowers in early January. So an example that maple can be an important nectar source or pollen source, perhaps. And then, of course, you need a large diversity of plants so that there's something blooming, or multiple species blooming every month of the growing season. So now I'll get into a little survey of the butterfly families. There are 6 families of butterflies with about 800 species in the US and Canada. And these families are the skippers, the swallowtails, the whites and sulfurs, the gossamer wings, the brushfoots, and a family that sometimes gets lumped into the gossamer wings, the metal marks. So I'm treating metal marks as a separate family. That's the way I learned it. I'm going to stick with that, the rhyodinids. And now I'll talk a little bit in detail about each family. First one I'll talk about is this more unusual one, the metal marks. Called metal marks because they often have metallic spots on the wings. In the tropics in particular, the metal marks can have extremely vivid blue, magenta, yellow, orange, green spots. Really, really striking. An example of an American metal mark is the Mormon metal mark, Apogynia mormo, but it's pretty brightly colored, as you can see on the right. And I do want to point out, this family is extremely diverse in the neotropics. If you were to go to the Amazon in Ecuador, like I did way back in 1996, you would see many, many metal mark species, hopefully if you were there at the right time, but much less diverse here in North America. Family more of us are familiar with are the swallowtails. Most species having tails on their hind wings. Hopefully you can see this cursor. I'm not sure. Can you all see my cursor?
Yes.
Excellent. Thanks, Lori. Yeah, take a look at these tails on the hind wing of this swallowtail. It looks pretty similar to the attenuated tail feathers of the barn swallow. And of course, we had swallowtail butterflies in England, where swallows, the ornithologists first named them swallows, and first named these swallowtails. That's how they got their name. Most of our swallowtails are very strikingly colored, either black and yellow, like this one, black and blue, or black and white. And most species in the US use woody plants as their host plants. So in this talk about grassland butterflies, I won't be talking that much about swallowtails. We do have swallowtails in grasslands, but they're not as prominent of a family as most of the others. The one that does really occur most often, in my experience in grasslands, is the black swallowtail, because it uses forbs in the family Apiaceae, the parrot family. Next family, family number 3, the Pieridae, the whites and the sulfurs. The adult butterflies are usually white or sulfur yellow. They vary in size from tiny to large. They are very widely distributed throughout the US. Many of them are very common. Many do live in grasslands, but relatively few are habitat specialists. They tend to be habitat generalists. And just to show you, we've got a white on the right. Over here, here's one of the sulfurs, the little yellow, beautiful little thing we have here in Oklahoma. Next family, family number 4, the gossamer wings, the Lycaenidae. Called gossamer wings because their wings often appear to be delicate and shimmery, like the gossamer produced by spiders, the gossamer webbing that they produce to enable their young to fly through the air. It is a very diverse family. It includes mostly very small butterflies that are often very brightly colored, in blue, green, copper, or sometimes lots of bold dots and checkers. It includes the major groups within this family. Some of the major groups are the blues, the coppers, and probably the largest one of all, the hair streaks. And an example there on the right is the eastern-tailed blue, one of the most abundant butterflies in North America. I've been on sites where there are about 15,000 of these per acre. I was able to measure that with a pretty nifty statistical technique. Here is the second of the major groups of gossamer wings, one of the coppers, the bronze copper. And here is a gorgeous hair streak. This is one of my absolute favorite species of the north central US or the central US, the Edwards hair streak. And of course, hair streaks get their name because of these delightful hair-like structures coming off the terminal margin of the hindwing. So just about all hair streaks have these. And hair streaks tend to be dainty and delicate and intricately colored. And I have a great love for them. Another photo of the same species, the Edwards hair streak. This species is somewhat rare. Might end up on the endangered species list someday. I hope we can protect its habitat well enough so that never becomes necessary. If we plant more butterfly milkweed, this species probably won't need to get listed because this butterfly just loves nectaring on butterfly milkweed. It's almost a specialist on it. Okay, family number 5, the largest family of butterflies in the world, the brushfoots, family Nymphalidae. Most insects have 6 legs. Butterflies have 6 legs. Nymphalids have 6 legs, but look, you can only see 4 here. That's because these 2 structures here are legs that have been modified to be, to my memory, chemosensory structures. So they walk on 4 legs, but they have these 2 legs that are very, very feathery up near the head. This is the most diverse butterfly family in the US and on the planet. There are, I believe, over 6,000 species of these in the world. And there are many subfamilies of nymphalids that differ greatly from one another. And this is one of the most abundant and widespread nymphalids in the world, the painted lady. Just about everywhere in North America, also Europe, much of that North Africa and Asia, extremely widely distributed nymphallid. Here's one more of the southwestern US, the bordered patch. Very, very beautiful. It's a photo from my garden. To give you an idea of a very different type of nymphallid, we've got the common wood nymph, which is in what used to be called the family Satyridae, the wood satyrs. So as opposed to the bright coloration of the previous butterflies, this is much more subdued, lots of brown. This is common here in the central US, actually much of the US. And then we've got the Gulf fritillary, something completely different. And many fritillaries, actually, we have many fritillary species. Out west in particular, fritillaries are very, very diverse and hard to tell apart from one another. Here in the central US and in eastern Pennsylvania, we have maybe the most beautiful fritillary of all, the regal fritillary, which is distinctive. Notice the photo on the right of the ventral surface. You've got these really, really large white, silvery white spots contrasting against the copper background color. On the left, you've got orange and some vivid blue and white and orange spots. Extremely striking butterfly, a large butterfly, and one of our rarest butterflies of this region. Regal fritillaries are prairie specialists. They need fairly large tracts of intact, high-quality prairie, like the two shown in this picture. Both of these sites actually, the one on the left in Oklahoma, the one in the right in northern Missouri, these are two of the best places I've ever been to find regal fritillaries. The site on the left is the only place in Oklahoma, the only place where you can reliably find regal fritillaries. And I'm not kidding. We're talking about just a tiny handful of individuals each year. You want to see them, go to this spot on the left. Go anywhere else, probably won't see them. And how is the regal fritillary doing? Well, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is doing a species status assessment. And as you can see down here, it is still under review, still being assessed. And I played a small role in the species status assessment process, but I do not know where it is at right now. Another brushfoot, the most famous butterfly on the planet, the monarch, used to be in its own family, the Danaidae, the milkweed butterflies. The Danaidae is now a subfamily within the Nymphalidae. What can we say about the monarch that you don't already know? Well, you probably already know that it's in trouble. This graphic from Monarch Joint Venture shows the area in Mexico during winter occupied by monarchs. And that's how we measure monarch abundance east of the Rocky Mountains. Is people in Mexico, well, particularly the World Wildlife Fund in Mexico, assesses the number of hectares, and that's the unit on the y-axis, the number of hectares of forest covered by monarchs. And as you could see in the 1990s, it used to be really high, and then it went down and it has stayed down. And this is one of the main reasons why monarch is being considered for listing by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And indeed, they have declared it a candidate species, which means they found it does deserve to be listed as a threatened species, but it's precluded by all the other workload that they have. So I'm not sure, I can't remember, every year, a couple of years, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service will review the status of the monarch and decide whether or not to list it as threatened. Okay, finally, our last family, the skippers, the Hesperiidae. Many, many species of dicot skippers feed on dicots as host plants, dicots as opposed to monocots. Skippers are usually small, but not tiny, dicot skippers, that is. And they have a hooked bulb antenna, but they don't keep their wings in a V shape. So again, the dicot skippers. On the other hand, the grass skippers tend to be much smaller. Their larvae use grasses as a host plants. They are often brown or orange-brown or yellow or some combination. And when stationary, they often hold their wings like this, partially making two V's. And they do have a hooked bulb at the end of each antenna. So how are grass skippers doing in the Southern Plains? Photos of the Orogo skipper and dotted skipper were taken by Brian Reynolds, who's one of the best butterfly photographers I know of. He's in Lexington, Oklahoma. I'm pretty sure both of these photos were taken in Oklahoma. So that lets you know that we still have them in Oklahoma. And actually, I have each of these species my wife and I have each of these species on our farm. So Orogo skippers are fairly easy to find here in the Southern Plains, at least in Oklahoma and Kansas. But I do have big questions. I have very, very little knowledge of the status of grass skippers in Texas. I can't even name people in Texas who do research on grass skippers or who monitor them. So if any of y'all are from Texas and know about grass skippers, please shoot me an email. I would love to learn more about grass skippers in Texas and in Western Kansas and in Colorado, Nebraska for that matter. So how are prairie skippers doing in Minnesota, where I know many of you are from? Please note the next two slides were given to me last week by Dr. Jessica Peterson with the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. We had our first chat, and it was terrific. We've done research on some similar topics over the years, so it was neat to finally get in touch. And she had some bad news. Of these 10 species of prairie skippers in Minnesota, 6 have been extirpated from the state. Very, very depressing. And of the other 4, the Dakota skipper, shown here, has only a single population in Minnesota. The dusted skipper is restricted to a transition zone. The Pawnee skipper has only 3 populations. The Leonard skipper doing a little better. Didn't get any other details, but 6 of these species have disappeared from the state. And many of these have disappeared from many other states in the north central US. The last time I checked, a Rogo skipper was gone from Iowa. Poweshiek skipperling has been gone from Iowa, I believe, for a long time. So really, really scary news about these species. What are some of the main causes of this? Well, of course, grassland loss. This map, in this map, the green shows intact grassland, but the 2 shades of red show grassland that have been converted to cropland. And as you could see, in my neck of the woods, we still have a lot of green, also up into the Flint Hills of Kansas. And this green is providing lots of habitat for Rogo skippers and Oto skippers and Bissus skippers and regal fritillaries. But look up here in Minnesota, most of the grassland is gone. It's been turned into pine. And that is a huge cause of the disappearance of those skippers. Another threat is fire. The direct effect of fire is that it incinerates butterflies, particularly the immobile forms, the egg, larvae, and pupae. The seminal work on fire and prairie butterflies was done by Anne Swengel in 1996. And I discovered this paper. I found this paper way back in 1996, and I was a graduate student in Florida. And I dreamed of seeing regal fritillaries someday, of going to the Midwest and seeing regal fritillaries. And this paper really got me interested in fire and butterflies. So my thanks to Anne and her husband, Scott, for their wonderful line of research. There's in addition to that paper, there's plenty of other evidence of butterfly mortality due to fire. The Rogo skipper was extirpated from a national forest due to prescribed burn. The same skipper seemingly has been extirpated from the state of Iowa, possibly due to prescribed burning. And the regal fritillary, the large species I talked about before, was pretty clearly extirpated from the state of Ohio when a prescribed burn at its last site at the Rest Haven Wildlife Area wiped it out. So fire clearly can kill butterflies and can wipe them out, particularly of small sites. Another similar story, not quite as dire, is the frosted elfin. Beautiful little hair streak or little lycaenid butterfly. This paper authored in part by 2 good friends of mine, Dean and Sally Jew in Tallahassee, Florida, found that fire led to very major decreases in the frosted elfin abundance. 80%. They found 80% fewer frosted elfins when right after a fire, and it took 3 to 4 years for populations to recover. So, North America used to have millions and millions of acres that looked like this. What kept it like this? Fire. Fire. This site that we're looking at is open and beautiful because of fire. So in addition to fire being a threat to butterflies, the absence of fire is a threat to butterflies. Because when you have no fire, in my part of the world, you get what's behind me, cedar forest. And actually that is my land that we're seeing covered with cedars a few years ago. woody plant encroachment is a horrible threat to grassland butterflies in this part of the world, and it's getting worse and worse. Cedar forest has very little value to pollinators, except to this species, the juniper hairstreak, which, yes, uses it as a host plant. So prairie used to sustain many pollinators, like the monarch, like this bumblebee, the Southern Plains bumblebee, the regal. With fire, fire sustained the prairie, fire killed some butterflies, but the butterflies persisted. So there's got to be a way to burn and still have our rare butterfly species. In the hope of figuring out what that was, I embarked in research years ago at Oklahoma State University, and I studied the effects of fire and grazing on regal fritillary abundance. And in this graphic, simply shows the abundance of regal fritillaries on the left and time since fire on the x-axis. And you'll see that regal fritillaries were much more abundant the year of a fire, just 2 months after a fire, than they were 1 and 2 years after fire. Yes, that's right. Fire made regal fritillaries more abundant. Now, it killed some larvae. I have little doubt that it did, but it brought in, my presumption is that, our presumption is that it brought in butterflies from surrounding habitat, because the fire greatly increased floral production. And this was published in the paper way back in 2014. It stimulated pale purple coneflower on the left and tall blazing star on the right to produce many more flowers that fed regal fritillaries. How does fire impact monarchs? Well, Swengel found that monarchs were more abundant in recently burned prairie. Me and some co-authors found the same in Iowa, and Leone et al. In 2019 found that monarchs were more abundant in burned prairie. So fire clearly has some positive effects on monarch abundance. Dormant season fire stimulates the blooming of this milkweed at the very least. And I'm working on that with Diane Dubinsky and Nick Lyons. So prescribed fire is an essential tool. It helps our grasslands stay grasslands, increases bare ground for seed germination, and increases blooming. So some BMPs, please do what you can to burn no more than 1/3 of an area each year to minimize direct mortality. If small portions of your burn unit don't combust, leave them alone. You don't have to burn every bit of the burn patch. The unburned areas within your burn patch will serve as refugia for eggs, larvae, and pupae. Also, rotate the season of burn. If you burn the same time of every year, you're helping the same species every year and hurting the same other species every year. When you rotate the season of burn, it's better for the community as a whole. But burn when you can. I mentioned that I'm a partner with the USDA NRCS. They help to fund prescribed burning on your land. In fact, they help to fund the burning that I did on my land, on our land. This is a fire we conducted about 1.5 years ago to kill cedars and to improve monarch habitat. So if you're interested in getting technical or financial assistance from NRCS, please do a Google search for Service Center Locator or USDA Service Center Locator. You'll get to this webpage, you'll see the map, click on your state, and eventually you'll click on your county and you'll get the phone number of the people to call. Once again, Service Center Locator. I'm going to tell you about some other resources. The Xerces Society's Rangeland website, which lists some great, which has links to some great documents, including the one on the left, which I'm partial to because I'm one of the authors, a guide for producers in the Great Plains. The one on the right focuses on Western rangelands. Our website has many documents that you can download regarding pollinators. We have a a Xerces channel on YouTube with many, many different webinars. And you can connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, or my favorite, Instagram. I've got a lot of videos on Instagram of butterflies and beetles and stuff. Donors make it possible. I wouldn't have my job without Xerces Society members and donors, so please consider becoming a member today. I'm going to acknowledge our many supporters, Xerces Society members, a variety of corporations and nonprofits, and of course the USDA NRCS. And I'm hoping there's time for questions. If not, please take a picture of these email addresses and email me some questions, or give me a call at that number below. But better yet, shoot me the email, ray.moranz@xerces.org. Thank you for your time.